10 amendments to be considered. They will consider the rule when they come in next, the House gaveling in for that, and also likely to finish up work on the Coast Guard bill. Now live to the House floor here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. Prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conway.
Let us pray. Loving and gracious God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. Help us this day to draw closer to you, so that with your Spirit and aware of your presence among us, we may all face the tasks of this day. Bless the members of the People's House. Help them to think clearly, speak confidently, and act courageously in the belief that all noble service is based upon patience, truth, and love. May these decisive days through which we are living make them genuine enough to maintain their integrity, great enough to be humble, and good enough to keep their faith, always regarding public office as a sacred trust. Give them the wisdom and the courage to fail not their fellow citizens, nor you. May all that is done this day be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined a journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by the gentlelady from Ohio, Ms. Fudge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 15 requests on each side for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise? Without
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in honor of Captain Dale Getz, who was killed in Afghanistan by the enemy on August 30th, 2010, in service to his country and his God. Captain Getz, you see, was a chaplain and Baptist minister. The last time the Army lost a chaplain in combat was in 1970 at the height of the Vietnam War. The picture by me shows the memorial service at Fort Carson, Colorado for Captain Getz and other brave soldiers who made the ultimate sacrifice. If you look closely, you will see that in place of a rifle, there is a cross. Chaplains, you see, are unarmed. Captain Getz leaves behind 3 sons, Landon, Caleb, and Joel, and his loving and devoted wife, Christy. Captain Getz will always be remembered by his family and friends who survive him and by his fellow soldiers for whom he gave so much. They will remember his love of country, his bravery under fire, his devotion to others, and most of all, a heart fully committed to the Lord and Savior he served and loved so fully. Greater love has no one than this, that one laid down his life for his friends. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California rise? Without objection.
There was a time when women and minorities could not vote in this country. People were jailed and even killed for the right to vote. But because people fought back, every U.S. citizen gained the right to vote. That is, up until now. This year, an unprecedented 42 bills were introduced in various states to deprive you of that right. States have passed voter ID laws that would stop 21 million legal U.S. citizens from voting, including your grandmother, who was born in this country and lived here for 82 years. Why? Because she no longer drives and doesn't have a picture ID. These laws would stop early voting and voting by mail so that if you know you have to travel out of town or have an operation on Election Day, you would be deprived of casting your vote. This threatens the very basis of our democracy. We must work together to protect every American's right to vote.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Madam Speaker, I ask permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
My remarks.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, on Friday, Congress will have the opportunity to vote on the balanced budget amendment. This legislation will limit Congress from spending more than it receives in revenues unless both the House and Senate agree with a 3/5 vote. Under the current president, the national debt has increased at 34% and grown to almost $15 trillion. With the federal government borrowing 42 cents for every dollar it spends, it's past time to take action, fulfilling the first bill introduced by my predecessor, the late Chairman Floyd Spence, for a balanced budget amendment. The passage of the balanced budget amendment will help grow the economy and create jobs. I hope both parties will come together and pass the balanced budget amendment, which will put America back to work and promote small business job creation. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose? Gentleman from Illinois rise. Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if anyone had any doubt that Iran was pursuing a nuclear weapon, they can stop their questioning. Iran is pursuing nuclear weapons, and according to a new report by the International Atomic Energy Agency, they could have a bomb within a year. Iran is not only developing the material for a nuclear weapon, but as the report makes clear, they are also pursuing the means to trigger and deliver a nuclear bomb, posing a threat to our ally Israel, our troops, and the entire region. Given the report's findings, claims by Iran's leaders that their nuclear program is peaceful are no longer credible, and the window for action to stop them is shrinking. We must execute crippling sanctions immediately. Specifically, we must put in place debilitating sanctions on the central bank of Iran, a crucial financer of Iran's nuclear program. There can be no doubt that Iran is pursuing a nuclear bomb. There can be no doubt that we must and will do what it takes to stop them. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose? The gentleman from Arkansas rise.
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to take this time to honor a constituent from my district, Mr. Ron Rooney. Mr. Rooney is President and CEO of the Arkansas Methodist Medical Center in Paragould, Arkansas. The Arkansas Methodist Medical Center has provided Arkansans with the highest quality medical care available for over 60 years and has continued to raise their standard of service under Mr. Rooney's leadership. Mr. Rooney graduated from George Washington University with a Master of Business in Healthcare Administration and has used his expertise in healthcare to benefit his community for the past 40 years. In addition to his duties as President and CEO, Mr. Rooney remains active in the healthcare community nationwide. As a member of the Board of Directors of VHA, Mr. Rooney helps provide best practices for nonprofit hospitals throughout the United States. He previously served as Chairman of the Arkansas Hospital Association and remains active on the organization's Governmental Relations Committee. As the son of a doctor, Ron Rooney has been surrounded by healthcare his entire life. He's raised his own family and his wife Lois, his 4 children and 7 grandchildren. Mr. Rooney remains committed to his profession, and his contribution to healthcare in Arkansas and his community is immeasurable, and I want to say happy retirement after several years, decades of service. Mr. Rooney, we appreciate your service, and with that I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose? The gentleman from Minnesota rise.
House for 1 minute to revise and extend my
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to urge, no, to implore my colleagues to support the Stock Act and ask Speaker Boehner to bring this bill to the floor immediately. On Sunday night, the CBS News program 60 Minutes highlighted a problem of potential insider trading on Capitol Hill. Unlike other Americans, members of Congress and their staff are not held legally responsible for profiting from non-public information they gain in their official positions. It's outrageous. When I came to Congress several years ago, I couldn't believe it wasn't already a law. At a time when Americans are understandably frustrated with bickering and gridlock here in Congress, the one thing we can do is restore their trust in the system. This legislation is a big step in that direction of restoring that trust. It's very simple. It asks that if you are a member of Congress, receive information, you cannot trade stocks to profit from those. It's a simple bill. I ask Speaker Boehner to allow this bill to come to the floor. Let's make sure that the American people may differ with us on ideas, and healthy debate is fine, but they must not believe the system is corrupt and people are gaining the system. I ask this be brought to the floor, and I encourage my colleagues to vote for it. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose? The gentleman from Illinois rise.
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last week I saw the results of a survey of the businesses from the National Federation of Independent Business. I want you to hear some of the concerns of the small businesses of the 14th Congressional District of Illinois. 88% of the small businesses support repeal of Obamacare, something we've been working hard to achieve here in the House of Representatives. 90% support passage of a balanced budget amendment, something this body will be voting on later this week, and of which also I strongly support. Small business knows, as I do, that the way that we get our economy moving again is by shrinking the size of government, bringing confidence back to job creators, and getting Washington bureaucrats off the backs of our nation's small businesses. We're working hard to do just that with the forgotten 20 bills that are now sitting over in the Senate, and I look forward to continuing their fight. I also want to take this opportunity to say happy birthday to Christy and Caden. I wish I was home with you today. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purposes? The gentleman from California rise.
Madam Speaker, I ask the consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, the poverty rate in California and the Inland Empire has risen from 11% to 17%. My constituents are hurting, and it's time for Congress to live up to its responsibilities. But in the 45 weeks since the Republicans took control of the House, they have failed to pass a single bill that creates jobs for the American people. The American Job Act contains bipartisan ideas, keeps our teachers, firefighters, and cops on the jobs, provides tax cuts to help small businesses grow and hire more workers, helps to rebuild our crumbling roads, bridges, and airports, puts more of our veterans who are returning troops back to work. This is a balanced approach to help fix the American job crisis. It's long past overdue. We need to bring it up for a vote. The 14 million Americans looking for a job can't wait any longer. They need a job. Let's act now. Let's pass the Job Act. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purposes? Gentleman from North Dakota rise.
Speaker, a request to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, 15 years ago, a balanced budget amendment by a single vote failed in the Senate. Since then, our debt has tripled, largely due to President Obama's increased spending. In fact, it took our nation over 200 years to accumulate the same amount of debt as we've accumulated in the last 2.5 years. In North Dakota, we know that you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. This week, Congress has the opportunity to get it right. In North Dakota, we balance our budget and we work to leave that next generation better off. Washington could learn a lot from North Dakota, and that's why I will proudly vote for a balanced budget amendment this week. Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose? The gentlewoman from Ohio rise. Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to applaud the state of Ohio as the first state to pass legislation designating December 1st as Rosa Parks Day. House Bill 421, introduced in 2005 by then State Representative Joyce Beatty, who is with us today, honors the life and legacy of the mother of the civil rights movement. Ohio continues to honor Rosa Parks with an annual statewide tribute on December 1st, and it is entitled The Power of One. This tribute, which is a partnership between The Ohio State University, the Ohio Historical Society, the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, and the Central Ohio Transit Authority, celebrates the day when Rosa Parks took a stand by staying seated. It includes a children's assembly that welcomes 800 school children to learn and be inspired by her legacy. I am proud to recognize the great state of Ohio for commemorating Rosa Parks' legacy of inspiration and courage, and our state's ongoing commitment to educating young people about civil rights. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose? The gentleman from Oklahoma rise. Without objection. Without objection.
Madam Speaker, in my district, we disagree a lot about football, but we strongly agree that the federal government must balance its budget. As a freshman, I've seen firsthand this body will only make the hard decisions when they have to make the hard decisions. Though we don't agree that we need to balance a budget every time and every place, we do understand that as a federal budget over the course of a year, we must balance our budget. We don't do that because the Constitution doesn't require it. It's time to change that reality. In 1995, this body overwhelmingly approved a simple balanced budget amendment, and it required that we would balance our budget each year. It failed in the Senate by 1 vote, passed overwhelmingly in the House. If it had passed both bodies and been ratified by the states within 10 years, we would have balanced the budget by 2005. Our total debt in 2005 was $7.5 trillion. It is now $15 trillion. In just 6 years, we doubled our debt. Now we stand here again debating if this is the best language or the best option for a balanced budget amendment. If we fail to pass this year, 10 years from now, some freshman congressman will stand at this microphone and berate the 2011 Congress for delaying again the decision and passing on to their generation an even bigger debt. Let's build a wall around the federal checkbook, and let's pass this simple balanced budget amendment. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. For what purpose? The gentleman from New Jersey rise. Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to bring attention to the great need to update our nation's infrastructure, and in particular bridges. Bridges play a vital role in moving people and goods, and for too many of our bridges are falling into a state of disrepair. Our nation has a total of 600,000 bridges, with over 65,000 being deemed deficient. That means 11.5% of our nation's bridges are considered deficient and require significant maintenance, rehabilitation, or replacement. In the New Jersey portion of New York City metropolitan area, over 8 million vehicles cross a deficient bridge every day. The infrastructure in the United States is crumbling, and the backlog of deficient bridges is growing. Congress has not been able to pass a long-term transportation funding bill for 2 years. We're still working on a fiscal year 2012 budget that will provide states with important transportation funding. This year, the construction industry has been suffering from unemployment rates of up to 20%. Investing in bridges will create jobs today, keep Americans safe, and ensure economic development for the future. Madam Speaker, I urge my colleagues to pass legislation to strengthen our transportation infrastructure and put people back to work.
Gentleman's time's expired. For what purpose? The gentleman from Pennsylvania rise. Without objection.
Madam Speaker, while we have watched courageous democracy, human rights, and leaders of minorities stand up to thugs and extremists and demand a free and peaceful Egypt, deeply disturbing cases are occurring where the spotlight is not shining. Reports indicate that on October 16, Ayman Labib was in his Arabic class when his teacher told him to get rid of the cross tattooed on his wrist. When Ayman said it was a tattoo, the teacher asked the other students, "What are we going to do about this?" and incited the students in the class to attack Ayman. He tried to flee, but ultimately the students, with the support of their teachers, murdered this young man. Egyptian media, controlled by the military government, has tried to deny the sectarian reasons for this brutal murder. After the new anti-discrimination law put into place after October 9, when Egyptian security forces ran over cops with bulldozers, will those teachers, adults, and students be brought to justice for this brutal murder? The Egyptian military must bring the perpetrators to justice. Otherwise, their tacit approval of this act will only bring further violence and bloodshed. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. For what purpose? The gentlewoman from Hawaii rise.
Madam Speaker, I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, my home state of Hawaii just hosted APEC, and I'd like to thank the people of the state for their patience and understanding. There were 21 Asian Pacific countries represented at this event. Our president was there, as was the president of China, Russia, and the Prime Minister of Japan, to name a few. It's important to note that what was dominating the conversations was the rising dominance of China. The president, our president, asked China to end the policies of keeping the yuan artificially low, and it is artificially low at 28 to 30%. Think about what it would mean to us, our economy, if they would just reevaluate. It would support 1.6 billion jobs. It would increase our GDP by $285 billion in just 18 months, and our deficit would be reduced between $670 to $800 billion in just 10 years. Madam Speaker, why haven't we taken up the issue of the reevaluation of the yuan? Our Senate passed it in October, the Currency Exchange Rate Oversight Act. It is time for us to act. The United States must maintain its dominance and its position. Please bring that bill up to our floor. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back my time.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. For what purpose? The gentleman from Texas rise. Without objection.
Madam Speaker,
There is a difference between President Obama's rhetoric and the reality for the American people. He says we can't wait for more U.S. manufacturing and construction jobs. He says we can't wait for more American middle-class jobs. He says we can't wait to wean ourselves off of Middle Eastern oil. He says we can't wait to reduce our foreign trade deficits. He says we can't wait to reduce our federal budget deficit. These are the things he says, but they aren't the things he's doing. By delaying the Keystone XL pipeline project, he's putting the American people in continuing jeopardy by doing the following. He is killing U.S. manufacturing and construction job opportunities. He is keeping us hooked on Middle Eastern oil and sending billions of dollars each week to terrorist-friendly countries, hurting our security and our international trade deficit. He is eliminating one of the tools to reduce the federal deficit. Instead, he keeps wasting billions of dollars out of our children's and grandchildren's futures on failed Washington programs like Solyndra, Beacon, and building cars in Finland. If the President is serious about creating good, shovel-ready American middle-class jobs based on Main Street solutions and not Washington solutions, he would move forward with the Keystone XL project right now. We can't wait for Main Street job solutions. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. For what purposes the gentleman from the Northern Mariana Islands? Without objection.
Madam Speaker, 25 years ago, a group of forward-thinking and civic-minded individuals realized the need for volunteer support and fundraising for the new hospital nearing completion in the Northern Mariana Islands. So was born the Commonwealth Health Center Volunteers Association. The volunteers have made tremendous contribution to our hospitals on Saipan, Tinian, and Rota, and have made an appreciable difference to the experience of every patient who receives health care in the Northern Marianas. Since its founding, the group has donated over $2 million in medical equipment and supplies. Many of these donations include life-saving diagnostic and treatment equipment and other supplies that dramatically improve the quality of life for patients and their families. The volunteers have withstood the many challenges that have faced our community over the past 25 years, and I think that's a good indication of their ability to successfully navigate the next 25. Please join me in celebrating the wonderful men and women who founded and over the years staffed and supported the Commonwealth Health Center Volunteers Association. Thank you, Mr.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from Florida, rise?
To address the House for 1 minute revised.
Without objection.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, last night I held a town hall meeting, and I spoke with hundreds of my constituents about the pressing issues facing America today. Many people on the call spoke about the need for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, and an overwhelming majority replied in a survey that there should be a balanced budget amendment. I was pleased to report to them that the House will be voting this week on a balanced budget amendment that will help Washington get its fiscal house in order and will reverse the dangerous practices of saddling our future generations with insurmountable debt. A balanced budget amendment, Madam Speaker, is not a radical idea. It's a normal expectation for hard-working taxpayers, families, and businesses, as well as state governments. Why not the federal government, Madam Speaker? Thank you very much, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose, the gentleman from Kentucky, rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, the average American household has lost $8,000 of income over the last few years. If we want to put a number on the economic crisis facing our country right now, that should be it. If you ask the average person how to get $8,000 back into the pockets of American families, you'd get some pretty good answers. But if you ask the average congressional Republican, you'd get an answer that's so out of touch with reality you'd think they were creating policy by playing Mad Libs. Mad Libs, the children's game where you provide random words to complete a story you haven't seen. That seems like the only conceivable explanation for the Republicans' so-called jobs proposals. Think about how they fill in this blank. The best way to get Americans back to work is poison our air and water, get rid of consumer protections, end Medicare. It's like they haven't read the question. It's no surprise Americans find the GOP's Mad Libs economics maddening. It's time to stop playing games and start getting to work on building an economy that works for all Americans. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from Kansas, rise?
Address the House for 1 minute, revise, extend my
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, both parties in this Congress have espoused support for job creation. In fact, on this House daily, both Republicans and Democrats have said the economy and jobs should be our top priority. The President has stated in recent months that he would pivot his time and energy to a focus on jobs. Yet, last week, this administration pivoted away from jobs again when it effectively delayed until 2013 the construction of the Canadian Keystone XL pipeline, and along with this delay, killing the potential to create 20,000 jobs. This $7 billion pipeline would bring oil from Canada to refineries in the United States and is expected to add billions of dollars of investment in the American economy. With the economy continuing to struggle, we can't wait to create these new jobs. The American people are tired of seeing their government say one thing and do another. It's time for the rhetoric to meet the road, and I urge this administration to reconsider its decision, to reconsider this delay, and to unify this country back to a focus on jobs. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the woman from California rise? 1 minute. Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to call on Republicans to wake up to the needs of Americans, millions of Americans, mind you, and to create jobs. The Republican-led Congress has led almost an entire year without enacting a single piece of jobs legislation. Madam Speaker, America cannot wait. Republicans continue to ignore the crisis of unemployment and poverty in America and instead keep bringing more bills to bail out the wealthy. Let's stop bailing out Wall Street and bring some real relief to Main Street. Let's stop wasting time pretending that markets can regulate themselves. We need strong oversight so that we have no more Bernie Madoffs and bank bailouts. Let's stop wasting time pretending the tax cuts for the wealthy pay for themselves. We need corporations and the wealthy to pay their fair share. Last week, Madam Speaker, I held a jobs fair. Thousands showed up. People want to work. This is a national emergency. Let's reignite the American dream by passing the American Jobs Act now. I yield the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. For what purpose? Gentleman from Texas rise.
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, the troops in Iraq will be home by Christmas. Also coming back to America is a large amount of military equipment. Why not send some of that taxpayer-funded equipment to secure our southern border? Our border sheriffs say they are outmanned, outgunned, and outfinanced by the drug cartels. So today I've introduced legislation which mandates that 10% of certain military equipment coming back from Iraq will go to our southern border. If there's an urgent need, the equipment could be kept by the Department of Defense. This equipment includes Humvees, night vision equipment, and surveillance UAVs. This is not a new idea. The Department of Defense already has a program for distribution of surplus equipment. My legislation will simply utilize this already existing program, expand it, and allocate resources to our southern border. Americans have paid for this equipment to bring safety and security to the people of Iraq. It's time we use this equipment to protect our own citizens from the invasion of the drug cartels. And that's just the way it is.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose? The gentleman from Virginia rise. Without objection.
Madam Speaker, failure is not an option. Let none of us forget that we work for the American people, and they expect us to do our job. World markets are watching. Balance is demanded. $1.2 trillion in deficit reduction is the minimal target we must meet. Current federal spending is 25% of GDP. It's too high. But revenue is only 14 to 15% of GDP. It's too low. It is the height of irresponsibility to ignore either one of those two data points. It might not be easy, but it's not rocket science. It requires both parties to do what a clear majority of Americans want us to do, break out of our respective straitjacket orthodoxies. I was proud to join 100 bipartisan members of this body urging the supercommittee to go big, find $4 trillion in deficit reduction. Such efforts would reduce the debt to a more manageable percentage of GDP, reassure markets, preserve our nation's AAA bond rating, and provide the stability to get America's economy growing again. I urge my colleagues on the supercommittee to join us and go big for America. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose? The gentlewoman from Texas rise. Without objection.
Instead of Republican legislatures across America, Madam Speaker, focusing on creating jobs in their states, working with this Congress to create jobs, we find ourselves shackled by 40 states implementing voter ID laws. Provisions that limit voting by requiring the presentation of photo identification that, however, is limited to state-authorized voter ID, which has a negative impact on our seniors. Laws that exclude the most common forms of ID, student IDs and Social Security cards, but they offer no alternate procedures. Changes requiring limitations or outright elimination of early voting opportunities, barriers to first-time voters such as the elimination of same-day registration. Madam Speaker, couldn't we do better than to counter the 15th Amendment, which indicates that there should be no laws that would thwart anyone's right to vote, or even the 24th Amendment that indicates that we should not have a poll tax to allow people to vote? Rather than creating jobs through passing the American Jobs Act, or standing up and denouncing sexual abuse of children, which is a crisis and an outrage, we are stopping people from voting by putting in place voter ID laws. Voter suppression, the Constitution will not tolerate it. The 15th Amendment and the 24th Amendment. Let us open the opportunity for all people and fight the real issues that the American people want us to address. I yield back.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. For what purpose? The gentleman from Massachusetts rise. Without objection.
Hey, Madam Speaker, there's a lot of talk about the super committee and deficit reduction. But, Madam Speaker, what we need is a super committee for jobs. And here's the deal. If we can create more jobs, we can reduce our deficit. But my Republican friends have gone out of their way to talk about everything on this House floor except jobs. They refuse to bring the President's jobs bill to the floor. They refuse to invest in our roads, bridges, and infrastructure. They're threatening to cut medical research, Medicare, and funds for education. And all they seem to care about is making sure that the top 1% of income earners are protected from paying their fair share. It's time for a new agenda, Madam Speaker. It's time for a jobs agenda. It's time for the Republican leadership to focus and to get to work. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Okay. For 1 minute is concluded. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 463 for its immediate consideration.
Clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 90, House Resolution 463. Resolved, that at any time after the adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved into the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill, H.R. 822, to amend Title 18, United States Code, to provide a national standard in accordance with which non-residents of a state may carry concealed firearms in the state. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Judiciary. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. It shall be in order to consider as an original bill for the purpose of amendment under the 5-minute rule the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on the Judiciary now printed in the bill. The committee amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered as read. All points of order against the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute are waived. No amendment to the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be in order except those printed in the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole. All points of order against such amendments are waived. At the conclusion of consideration of the bill for amendment, the committee shall rise and report the bill to the House with such amendments as may have been adopted. Any member may demand a separate vote in the House on any amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole to the bill or to the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill, and amendments thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Nugent, is recognized for 1 hour.
For the purposes of debate only, the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Worcester, Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, pending which I yield myself as much time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Madam Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent on all members that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of this rule, House Resolution 463. The rule provides for consideration to an important piece of legislation, H.R. 822, the National Right to Carry Reciprocity Act of 2011. I'm proud to sponsor this rule, which provides for a structured amendment process that will allow members to have a thorough debate on a wide variety of relevant and germane amendments to H.R. 822. We've allowed 10 amendments to this bill, 2 Republican amendments and 8 Democratic amendments. Even as a contentious bill, a bill where it would be easy to shut down the process. We not only are allowing amendments, but for those that will be debating on the floor, the vast majority are Democratic amendments. We did this not because it was the easy thing to do. We did it because it was the right thing to do. It brought transparency to the debate, and it is in keeping with the promises of the Republican Party made to the American people for a freer, more open process. Madam Speaker, until coming to this body 10 months ago, I had spent my entire career as a cop, the last 10 years as sheriff in Hernando County, Florida. During my 38 years in law enforcement, I found that disarming honest citizens does nothing to reduce crime. If anything, all it does is keep law-abiding citizens from being able to defend themselves from violent criminals. Although I know this just from my anecdotal experience, research backs up the claim. For example, statistics indicate that citizens with carry permits are more law-abiding than the general public. In my home state of Florida, only 0.01% of nearly 1.2 million permits have been revoked because of firearms crimes committed by permit holders. Additionally, evidence indicates that crime declines in states with right-to-carry laws. Since Florida became a right-to-carry state in 1987, Florida's violent total crime and murder rates have dropped 32% and 58% respectively. Because of this evidence, as well as my firsthand experience, I'm a proud defender of our Second Amendment right, ensuring the right that people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. My history in law enforcement officer is also why I'm a proud co-sponsor of H.R. 822, the National Right to Carry Reciprocity Act of 2011. H.R. 822 is a good, bipartisan bill which enhances constitutional rights of law-abiding gun owners. Today, if I drive from my home state of Florida to Georgia, Georgia recognizes my Florida driver's license. It's still valid even once I cross the state line. H.R. 822 requires states to recognize each other's legally issued concealed carry permits in the same way. This legislation would take a comprehensive approach to helping law-abiding citizens navigate the patchwork of state concealed carry laws. 822 does not, let me repeat, does not create a national concealed carry permit system, nor does it establish any nationalized standard for a carry permit. H.R. 822 respects states' abilities to create their own gun usage laws as well as their own permitting processes. I'm sure that you will hear arguments from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle saying that H.R. 822 somehow makes it easier for people to get a gun. Let me assure you that, again, this is not the case. This legislation does not mandate that anyone suddenly be given a gun, nor does it relax any of the state's current permitting laws. During my nearly 40 years as a cop, I learned you just can't talk about guns. When you're talking about gun crime, you need to look at 2 distinct classes of guns. There are illegal guns and there are illegal guns. I can tell you as a cop, you don't worry about the legal guns. The guns that people brought from an authorized source, that they are registered and proper authorities. They took the necessary classes to learn how to use them responsibly, and they got their legal concealed carry permit. In my experience, you worry about the illegal guns. Guns that are somebody purposely bought them off the radar, either because they aren't legally allowed to own a gun or because they're going to use them for an illegal purpose. H.R. 822 doesn't get into that difference. What it does is ensures that a legal gun owner don't accidentally break the law simply because they brought their fully permitted gun to another state. This legislation simply gives peace of mind to Americans traveling across state lines with legally registered concealed firearm, knowing that they can practice their constitutional right to bear arms. Again, I'm a proud co-sponsor of H.R. 822 and support its passage. With that, I encourage all my colleagues to vote yes on the rule, yes on the underlying legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, I thank the gentleman from Florida for yielding me the customary 30 minutes. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, first of all, let me rise in opposition to this, this restrictive rule, yet another restrictive rule. A lot of good amendments were not made in order, and members do not have the right to offer amendments as they see fit during this debate. So I would urge my colleagues to vote no on the rule for that reason. Madam Speaker, another weak and another hot-button social issue is being brought to the floor by this extreme Republican leadership. A few weeks ago, this House debated an abortion bill. That's months after we considered legislation to defund Planned Parenthood. This Republican leadership has tried hard to overturn the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act simply because their corporate constituency demands it. And now we're turning to guns. We're about to debate legislation that makes it easier to carry concealed weapons in the United States. In fact, we're considering a bill that will make it easier for convicted felons. Yet, what do Americans want most of all right now? Are they screaming about for a lengthy debate on abortion issues? Do they want us debating whether or not we need to reaffirm our national motto? Are they clamoring for more lenient gun laws? No, Madam Speaker. The American people want jobs. J-O-B-S, jobs. But my Republican friends are either too stubborn to listen or just don't care enough to do something about the problem. Maybe they're just covering their eyes and plugging their ears, hoping that this crisis will magically disappear. That may work for a 6-year-old who's scared of ghosts, but that's not how you govern a country. Our unemployment rate is 9%. There are just under 14 million unemployed Americans. Millions more are earning less now than they were before the economic crisis, simply because they were forced with a choice to take a lower-paying job or face unemployment. And what's the Republican response to this problem? Not a jobs bill. In fact, the Republicans haven't brought up a jobs bill once in this Congress. So what, then, is their response to the jobs problem? Surprise, surprise, it's a gun bill. Madam Speaker, what are we doing here? This is nuts. This isn't what the American people sent us here to do. The irony is many of the new Republicans who were allegedly sent here because of their opposition to federal encroachment on states' rights, but here we are debating a bill that imposes the federal role on states and undermines states' laws. This is crazy in normal times, Madam Speaker. It's even crazier today. And unlike the resolution reaffirming our national motto that we debated a few weeks ago, this legislation will have real impacts on people's lives. Madam Speaker, people will be hurt because of this legislation. People, in fact, may die because of this bill. Don't take my word for it. Look at the facts. The bill obliterates state and local eligibility rules for concealed weapons. It eliminates the state's discretion to honor another state's permits. It requires states with responsible restrictions, like my home state of Massachusetts, to allow people with permits from states with lax laws to bring concealed weapons into those states. Simply, it allows a person to bring a hidden loaded gun into a state where, under today's laws, they are currently ineligible to carry a concealed weapon. Now, there are reasons that states don't allow certain people to carry concealed weapons, and each state is different. My home state of Massachusetts doesn't issue concealed weapons permits to people who have specific dangerous misdemeanor criminal convictions or alcohol abuse problems, as well as people who have not completed firearm safety training, people who do not have a good character, or those who are under the age of 21. And I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record following my remarks, a letter from the Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety and Security in opposition to this bill. But under this bill, a person who is convicted of spousal abuse in one state could go to a second state for a concealed weapon permit. When they get that permit, this bill allows that felon to bring their weapon into Massachusetts, even though they would not be eligible for a concealed weapon permit under current Massachusetts laws. Now, my friends on the other side of the aisle will say that this bill is necessary, that more guns mean less crime, that people need to be able to protect themselves. Well, that's not how our nation's mayors see it. Mayors against illegal guns strongly opposes this bill because it makes our cities less, not more, less safe. Mayors Against Illegal Guns, founded by Boston Mayor Tom Menino and New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, is made up of over 600 mayors of all political stripes united to respect the rights of law-abiding gun owners while keeping guns out of the hands of criminals and other dangerous people. And I'm especially grateful for the national leadership of Mayor Tom Menino, who has long been a champion on this issue. Not only do more than 600 mayors in this coalition oppose this bill, so do the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Major Cities Chiefs Association, the Police Foundation, the National Latino Peace Officers Association, and the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. In fact, not only does the American Bar Association oppose this bill, so does the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys. And I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record, following my remarks, the statement by the Mayors Against Illegal Guns in opposition to H.R. 822. Madam Speaker, Massachusetts is fortunate to have a number of anti-gun violence leaders in the Commonwealth. In addition to Mayor Menino, we are home to Stop Handgun Violence, and specifically its founder, John Rosenthal. Gun safety laws work. They keep our citizens safe. In fact, Massachusetts has the most comprehensive and effective gun violence prevention laws and initiatives and the lowest firearm fatality rate per 100,000 population of any urban industrial state, and second lowest overall behind Hawaii. Every day, more than 150 Americans are shot, and 83 die from gun violence in the United States. A child under 20 years old dies from gun violence every 3 hours, 8 kids every single day. We could fill Fenway Park three times over with 110,000 kids under 20 years old killed by guns in the past 30 years. And there is still no national law requiring criminal background checks for all gun sales in the U.S. In fact, in 33 states, there is no background check requirement or even proof of ID for private gun sales. And today we're going to make it easier, even easier for these people to carry concealed weapons. Massachusetts is the leader in gun violence prevention. We should be working to prevent gun violence, not encouraging it with legislation like this. Madam Speaker, federal preemption of Massachusetts law will only result in more innocent and largely preventable gun deaths in my home state. The same holds true for nearly every state in the Union. In fact, preempting state gun laws will make this entire country less safe, and I cannot and I will not support legislation that makes our neighborhoods and our cities and our states less safe. And Madam Speaker, let me conclude by saying, if we want to combat crime, if we want to make our neighborhoods safer, I would urge my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to join with us, and bring the President's jobs bill to the floor. Let's provide people with jobs and economic security. Let's revitalize our neighborhoods that are struggling now in poverty. That's what we should be doing, not debating a bill to make it easier to carry concealed weapons. I urge my colleagues to vote no on the rule and vote no on final passage of the bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Florida.
Madam Speaker, my colleague on the other side of the aisle talks about jobs bill. We're not talking about it right now, but if you look at this card, we have over 20 jobs bills that have passed out of this body that are sitting in the Senate today. Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, this time I am proud to I'm proud to yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from New York, the ranking member of the Rules Committee, Mrs. Slaughter.
Gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 3 minutes.
Speaker, I thank the gentleman for yielding. This is a serious piece of work for me today because less than a year ago, one of our colleagues from Arizona was shot in the head while she was trying to convene with her constituents outside a supermarket. The mayhem was awful. A little 19-year-old girl named Christina Taylor Greene, baseball fan who just came to see her congresswoman, was killed. And by all accounts, an extraordinary federal judge named John Roll died, as well as some of Gabby's staff numbers of people wounded. And yet the only person ever considered by this House would be the guy in his right to have that gun. What about the rights for the rest of us? Are we going to have to learn to dance up and down the street to try to escape the bullets? What happens to us? What are our amendment for us that we can be safe? The statistics of people now being killed in places of worship, the rising number of people in law enforcement who face unspeakable and awful things because we won't do our job here to disarm people who are mentally ill. And I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record an article from the New York Times of how easy it is for felons, including the mentally ill, to regain their gun rights. Now, when are we going to reinstate in this House the automatic weapons ban? And why don't we outlaw guns that are so powerful that they serve no purpose at all in a civilized society? When will we allow the federal authorities to computerize gun sale records so it's easier to hold a guilty individual responsible for the gun crimes? In the age of iPhones and Androids, our police are tracing gun crimes with scraps of paper and handwritten notes, and surely that is a more important job for us to do here than what we're doing to say you can carry a concealed weapon anywhere you want to go because that's who we are. Apparently, the Republican majority wants that. Based on today's bill, they think it's more important to pass legislation that will make it easier to carry a gun to a public gathering, easier to carry a loaded weapon into NFL stadiums, easier to carry a gun to the grocery store on Saturday afternoon or into your temple or your church. What in the world? How can we ever explain that to people who have had gun deaths in their family? The horrible shooting of our colleague wouldn't have been stopped with the passage of today's bill, and no one's made safer by allowing the guns into the public space. But since last January, Congress hasn't considered a single piece of legislation that would make it harder for a mentally ill individual to get a gun. We've done nothing at all to make sure that another nightmare like the one in Tucson doesn't visit our country yet again, leaving innocent children, men and women, victims to a loaded gun. And yet the only person we care about here is the gun owner. The only legislation we are considering will make it more convenient to carry your gun even in states that don't want it. Realizing this fact really puts the morality of this agenda into perspective. We should be...
Additional 1 minute.
Thank you. The Congress should be considering legislation that will help American people, not legislation that fulfills an ideological agenda, which is what we've been doing all year. I urge my colleagues to vigorously oppose today's legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. Gentleman from Florida.
Madam Speaker, in 2007, a Colorado man shot a Colorado man named Matthew Murray, allegedly wrote online, "All I want to do is kill and injure as many Christians as I can." Murray then went on to a shooting rampage, first killing 2 young students at a missionary training center outside of Denver, and then at a gathering of 7,000 people in and around the New Life Church in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with a rifle and a backpack full of ammunition. Murray entered the church and opened fire, killing 2 sisters. Murray was ultimately stopped and killed by a church member and a volunteer security guard, Jeannie Assam, who has a concealed carry permit and once worked in law enforcement. Assam shot Murray several times, leading him to kill himself. I reserve the balance of my time.
I'm going to reserve the balance of this time. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado, a member of the Rules Committee, Mr. Polis.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 3 minutes.
Gentleman from Massachusetts, and in hearing the story of my friend from Florida, my colleague on the Rules Committee, again, I think it just emphasizes that my state, Colorado, already has a concealed carry process. We have a must-issue provision because some of our county sheriffs were not issuing and were denying issuance unreasonably. But again, it highlights that this entire bill is a dangerous solution in search of a problem. Colorado has reciprocal concealed carry arrangements with over 30 states, including all of our neighboring states. So you can drive from Colorado to Wyoming in the south, you can drive from Colorado to New Mexico, to Arizona, in the north, to Wyoming, in the south to New Mexico, east or west, and you're in no danger about your concealed weapon permit not being recognized. And yes, there are some states that we don't have a reciprocal agreement from, for instance, the state of Nevada. And I'm failed to be convinced that the proper venue for that is not for the people of the sovereign state of Nevada and the sovereign state of Colorado to elect leadership that will work on a reciprocal carry arrangement if that's what they want to do. If there is a real issue there and my constituents are hampered by their ability not to have their Colorado concealed weapons permit recognized, let's say in the state of California, that's a matter between the states. Opening the door for federal intervention in this very sensitive area opens the door to a federal gun owner registry, which a number of gun owners, gun rights advocates in my district have expressed a great deal of worry over, as well as open the door for a whole host of other problems that can come from Washington, D.C. bureaucrats deciding where you can and can't take your guns, rather than protecting our Second Amendment in the states. Some other concerns that have been articulated to me from some of the gun owners' rights groups in the state of Colorado, they're worried about more onerous standards to acquire a permit. They're worried about a national database of permit holders. They're also worried about this particular provision nullifying the constitutional carry provisions that are on the books in Arizona, Alaska, Vermont, and Wyoming, and that states that have a popular election method of amending the Constitution are able to do. So again, what's the problem? I have not had any constituents contact me worried that they can't use their concealed weapons permit in a particular state. I think they're generally, and I have many concealed carry license holders in my district. I don't happen to be one myself, but they are able to, again, in all the bordering states, drive across state borders and not have to worry about relicensing or notifying authorities in those states. I think the gentleman from Florida articulated an example of Colorado where our concealed carry permit holder helped save some lives, and I think that's a fine and good thing. Again, it's an area of state sovereignty. I asked the chair of the Judiciary Committee yesterday in Rules whether he thought this provision was constitutionally required to protect the Second Amendment. He responded that no. In fact, the Second Amendment the states does not have to have a concealed weapons system, concealed carry system under the Second Amendment. It's a matter of discretion or policy in that state. And I think that this bill runs contrary to state sovereignty and to the privacy of individuals. That's why I will encourage my colleagues to vote no on this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Time's expired. The gentleman from Florida.
You know, the gentleman talks about state rights, and we agree. There are states that do not have concealed permit and carry permits. And so it is within the state's rights to decide whether or not how they're going to regulate that particular issue in regards to weapons in their state. I'd like to, Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Dr. Fox.
Gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my colleague from Florida for handling the rule. Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of this rule and the underlying bill. As a life member of the National Rifle Association and strong supporter of the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, I am pleased to speak in support of H.R. 822, the National Right to Carry Reciprocity Act, which will help protect law-abiding American citizens' right to bear arms. The Supreme Court ruled in District of Columbia versus Heller that, quote, the inherent right of self-defense has been central to the Second Amendment right, end quote. And in McDonald versus City of Chicago, that the federal government can intervene to ensure that state and local governments are not restricting Second Amendment rights. Statistics show a correlation between right to carry laws and a decrease in violent crime rates. According to NRA estimates based on the FBI's annual Uniform Crime Report, states that have right to carry laws have 22% lower total violent crime rates, 30% lower murder rates, 46% lower robbery rates, and 12% lower aggravated assault rates compared to the rest of the country. Law-abiding citizens have the right to protect themselves from criminals and defend themselves with firearms. Throughout my career in elected office, I've worked with my colleagues to ensure that American citizens maintain their Second Amendment rights. Each state has different eligibility requirements, and H.R. 822 maintains the state's ability to set its own eligibility. However, the bill would end uncertainty and confusion for concealed carry permit holders when they travel. 49 states allow individuals to conceal and carry handguns, and the bill before us would allow individuals who hold a concealed carry permit in their state of residence to carry that weapon in other states that allow concealed carry. Madam Speaker, this rule should be passed the underlying bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, can I ask unanimous consent to insert in the record the dissenting views from the Judiciary Committee that, entitled Loosening Restrictions on the Carrying of Concealed Guns in Public Does Not Improve Public Safety?
Without objection.
At this time, I'm happy to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Boren.
The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 822, the National Right to Carry Act of 2011. The Second Amendment of the United States Constitution provides citizens with the individual right to keep and bear arms. This right enables Americans to use firearms for self-protection, for hunting, and other lawful activities. H.R. 822 would guarantee that individuals who are legally licensed to carry a concealed weapon in their home state could also legally carry a concealed weapon in another state. The bill seeks to protect our fundamental liberty, not restrict it. Just as one state recognizes a driver's license issued by another state, I believe states should recognize conceal and carry licenses issued by another. Today, some states already have reciprocity agreements to recognize the conceal and carry laws of other states, while some do not. The result is a piecemeal system where a law-abiding citizen may be required to give up his or her weapon at the state line. If passed, this bill would streamline the system by making it more simple and uniform. H.R. 822 does not create federal standards for obtaining permits, nor does it require states to adopt a specific licensing system. Each state's right to determine its own permitting system will remain intact regardless of H.R. 822. You know, since the founding of our nation, American citizens have had the constitutional right to bear arms, and I believe this legislation is common sense solution to preserve that right. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on the rule today and to support final passage of H.R. 822. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.